In the world of zombie, he finally avenged his sworn enemy for his friends. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the 15th and 16th episodes of the 8th season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. As soon as this video gets 300 likes, I will release the next part. Enjoy watching it.
Rick rereads Carl's letter, in which he recalls happier times and urges Rick to reconcile with Negan and find a way to coexist. Michonne is lying in bed deep in thought and reviewing Carl's letter to Negan. Gregory meets Simon at the shelter and apologizes for giving him bad information about the hilltop. Simon knocks Gregory to the ground, but spares his life. Cindy, her team, finds Aaron lying on the ground in the woods near the ocean side. Cindy decides it's not her problem if Aaron wants to starve to death and they leave him to die. At the bullet factory, Eugene orders his workers to speed up the pace so they can meet their quota for Simon. He finds a flaw in one of Gabriel's bullets and suspends him from work after he admits that it was done intentionally. Eugene goes out to check a few rounds. One of the guards is shot in the head with an arrow, and Rosita cuts the throat of another. She and Daryl take Eugene hostage. While Dwight smokes in the courtyard of the shelter, Negan whistles. Dwight is surprised to see him alive and helps Negan move something. Negan expresses disappointment that he was left to die. Dwight explains that Simon thought he was dead and confirms his loyalty to Negan. Negan meets Simon and his other lieutenants. Simon asks Negan to forgive his insubordination to Hilltop. Negan reminds Simon of how they took over the hideout, as well as Simon's actions against Oceanside. He orders Simon to kneel, but spares his life. Negan lays out a plan to encircle the hilltop and destroy anyone who tries to leave. He takes Dwight aside and praises him for doing everything he can to stay alive. Daryl and Rosita lead Eugene down the road. Eugene tries to defend his alliance with Negan, but Rosita blames everyone for helping the rescuers escape from the besieged shelter. Eugene claims that Rick is the real cause of the war. Rosita shouts that they are going to lock Eugene up. They will keep him alive because of his knowledge and force him to work for them. She calls him weak and a coward. In his apartment, Dwight marks out a map for Rick and writes a message describing Negan's attack plan. Simon visits him and calls on Dwight to help him overthrow Negan. Dwight agrees to meet Simon in the courtyard to plan a coup. Daryl, Rosita, and Eugene encounter a herd of walkers. While Daryl is killing walkers, Eugene makes Rosita vomit and runs away before she has time to recover. Daryl and Rosita follow Eugene's footsteps through a pile of ashes. As they run away, Eugene emerges from the ashes and runs in the opposite direction. Aaron wakes up in the woods and fights off walkers. From hunger and weakness, he loses consciousness again. When he comes to, he is surrounded by Cindy and her team. He encourages them to fight the saviors so that they can live in freedom. Dwight meets Simon and a group of saviors in the courtyard to plan the fall of Negan. Simon offers him the opportunity to kill Negan himself. Dwight whistles. Negan whistles back and comes out of his hiding place. All the participants in the conspiracy, except Simon and Dwight, fall dead, executed by the hidden people of Negan. Negan angrily chastises him for the massacre of scavengers. Despite this and his betrayal, Negan offers him a chance to lead the saviors, fighting to the death. In the shelter, all the saviors surround Negan and Simon. Simon lands the first few punches. A fierce fight ensues. Negan takes over, beating Simon to a pulp. Negan stands over Simon and strangles him to death, while saying that because of Simon, he must kill everyone in the hilltop. During the battle, Dwight takes Gregory aside, hands him a map and orders him to deliver it to Rick. Gregory runs away. Gregory returns to Hilltops with plans, where Maggie throws him in jail. She gives the card to Rick. Negan escorts Dwight to his room and appoints him as his new right-hand man. Dwight opens the door and sees that Laura is waiting for him inside. Negan explains that he picked up Laura on the way back to the shelter and found out all about Dwight's betrayal. He guesses that Dwight was responsible for many of Rick's attacks on the Saviors, and explains that the map Dwight gave Rick will lead Rick right into the Saviors' line of fire, smugly stating that the plan was fake. Negan says he won't kill Dwight, but he will find a use for him. Eugene returns to the bullet factory in a rage. Regina informs him that Negan has returned and he needs bullets by morning to lure Rick's group into a trap. Eugene orders everyone to finish the job in time to destroy them. The newly converted Simon is chained to the fence in the shelter. Michonne contacts Negan on the walkie-talkie and reads the letter that Carl wrote to him. In his letter, Carl urges Negan to stop fighting and find a peaceful way with Rick. Negan refuses, saying that forgiveness is out of the question, swears to kill them all and crushes the radio with his foot. Alden and the prisoners of war destroy the walkers on the perimeter of the hilltop. Rick talks to Siddiq about the circumstances of Carl's death. Siddiq explains that Carl helped him kill walkers to free their souls, as Siddiq's mother once did. He regrets that he didn't think about the risk. The Hilltoppers are mobilizing to ambush the Saviors. And Ezekiel predicts that this morning may be the last for some of them. Rick, Maggie, Carol, Michonne, Daryl and Rosita discuss an attack plan. Michonne wonders if they can trust the intelligence delivered by Gregory. Morgan looks around the hilltop, confused and out of sorts. He aggressively heads towards Colden and Savior beats someone to the ground before realizing it's Henry. Rick suggests Morgan stay away, but Morgan vows to end the Saviors. Maggie refuses to let Alden and the captive Saviors join the fight. Rick's army is marching to battle. Rescuers are mobilizing in the shelter. Eugene informs Negan that he has manufactured the ammunition as requested. Negan shoots a test bullet at a mannequin with the inscription Rick and grins. He gives the card to two Saviors, Lance and Duke, and sends them on their way. Rick leads a group of scouts to keep an eye on Lance and Duke's group as they set up a roadblock. Negan, Laura, Eugene and Gabriel leave together. Negan predicts that Rick will send scouts to kill Lance's group when they set up a roadblock. He explains that he gave Lance and Duke, who were Simon's men, a deception card to lure Rick's group into an ambush. Rick's scouts kill Lance's group and find the map, not knowing it's a decoy. Morgan hallucinates and sees Jared. Rick informs Maggie on the walkie-talkie about the new ambush location indicated on the map. Gabriel jumps out of Negan's car and runs away. Laura and Eugene catches him. Negan hits Gabriel and orders him to get back in the car. Rick's army is crossing the field. Jesus suggests that Morgan refrain from killing people, leaving the sharp end of his stick for the walkers, and the blunt end for the living. A huge herd can be seen in the distance. The column of Saviors is approaching the hilltop. Tara, Cal and others are arming themselves. Rick's army is advancing to the ambush site. The whistling starts, like the night Glenn and Abraham died. Negan contacts the recompilation and explains that Rick's group is trapped. Negan and the Saviors appear on the crest of a nearby hill, line up in a massive line and open fire, but their weapons turn out to be faulty. The weapon explodes in their hands, killing many Saviors and previously many of those who survived, including Negan. Rick's army rushes to the attack. The battle begins in earnest. Hilltop residents are being evacuated. Tara, fearing that the crying of the child will put the Saviors on the trail, remains to fight. Alden and the other prisoners insist on helping her. Regina attacks Eugene for sabotaging the supply of ammunition. Rosita shoots Regina and the other two Saviors. Morgan is going to kill the Savior, but at the last moment he listens to the advice of Jesus and knocks him out. Tara and the prisoners are preparing for an attack. To their surprise, the Cyndia Oceansider ambushed the rescuers with Molotov cocktails. Defeated, Laura and the surviving Savior surrender to Rick's army. Rick runs out of ammo, and he fights Negan hand to hand. They stop at a tree from which a framed stained glass window hangs. Niga holds the upper hand. Rick asks Negan to give him 10 seconds to describe the future that Carl saw, and Negan agrees. Rick suddenly cuts Negan's throat with a piece of glass. Negan falls to the ground, clutching his bleeding neck. After a little thought, Rick orders Siddiq to save Negan. Maggie screams and demands that Negan die, but Michonne holds her back. Rick orders the Saviors to return home and proclaims that the reign of Negan is over. He points to a huge herd in the distance and declares that they must unite to fight the walkers, a real threat. Eugene confirms to Rosita that he sabotaged the Savior's ammunition, explaining that after their meetings he rethought his decisions. He was inspired to sabotage with cartridges by a similar attempt by Gabriel, which Eugene had previously prevented. Rosita slaps him in the face for dousing her, but otherwise seems to forgive Eugene for his actions. Morgan gives his armor to Carol to give to Henry. The light dances on Rick's face as he cries under a tree, saying to himself, "My mercy prevails over my anger." At the hilltop, Alden tells Maggie that he would like to stay to help build a stronger community, and also thanks her for giving him a new life. She agrees to his request. Rosita and Tara deliver supplies to the shelter, where the rescuers are rebuilding their complex. Rosita nods to Laura, who is planting a garden. Daryl releases Dwight in the woods with a set of car keys and vows to kill him if he ever comes back. Morgan goes to the dump and invites Jedis to join Rick's community. She accepts his offer and reveals her real name. But he decides to stay alone at the dump. Dwight goes to his old house and finds a note from Sherry. He smiles, having regained hope. Carol and Jerry and Henry return to the kingdom. Maggie meets Jesus and Daryl and declares that Rick should not have spared Egan's life. She vows to prove him wrong. Negan is recovering in the infirmary. Rick and Michonne inform him that he will rot in a cell for the rest of his days and serve as a reminder that people are capable of changing. Gabriel walks through a burnt-out church. He kneels before the altar and thanks God. In the flashback, Rick puts his sheriff's hat on 3-year-old Carl as they walk along a country road. In the present, he writes a letter to Carl, thanks him for reminding him who he is, and attributes a new world in his honor.